from a strategic portfolio management perspective, there's all kinds of dimensions and tools that you might want to get into, and they're all available to you here in the left side navigation, like it is in most modern tools. And there's a home page available for all users, and depending on your role, you'd see different things depending on who you are and what your role is in the organization. But insights onto things that require your attention, quick access to the plans that you are personally involved in without having to go to a larger expansive portfolio to find the things that pertain to you. Conversations on tasks and resources and plans that might be in there, things that might be due that need to require your attention. Once again, quick access to the things that pertain to you the most. Now, we talked about everything has to start with a strategy. And in OnePlan, there is a strategic planning area called My Strategy. In this case, it's modeled in objectives and key results. And to be quite honest, you can model it in whatever framework you like. But by default, and what people seem to be doing today is managing objectives and key results, where the objective or the strategy that they're trying to achieve is outlined, and then some tangible key results to help measure whether or not we're actually making progress towards that goal to achieving that, right? And being able to go in there and look at a strategy like increased project success rate and be able to drill into something like that and set the parameters for that, set a time frame for when you'd like to do that, set the key results that are associated with that, even set prioritization for this objective or this strategy as we start looking at trade-offs around those types of things. Now, is this aligned with a variety of other things? Absolutely. The visualizer that we talked about, and we're going to get to these elements in another further in this demonstration, but we can look and see if there's any overall predecessors and successors to what it is we're working with. But from an alignment perspective, we can come in here very quickly and say, this objective has 3 key results. These key results have projects and epics that are being executed on to support the achievement of those. And by the way, we're also related or dependent upon certain products, certain applications, et cetera, and even business capabilities and value streams. And you could be as expansive in this as you would like to be, or as narrow as you would like to be in this. And from the visualizer here, you can go in here and you could, basically come into any one of these elements and get a quick view of, the status, the details around this, and why it is where we're at on the status of that effort, or you could drill right into that element. If something's red, we could actually drill into that and look into the reasons as to why it's red and keep our finger on the pulse of the things that we're related to as we go on through. So once again, the strategy is very key in here, the objectives and the key results. Now, if we go to the next thing we talked about, which is kind of ideas and requests and the things that we are going to embark upon, to be able to have a central portal for anybody in your organization to be able to come in and submit an idea or a request into the mix, and then also be able to potentially do crowdsourcing and have people say vote on these things. It may be in parallel with what's being going through your internal approval process and that type of thing, right? And as we go through something like this and we drill into something like this website redesign, right? We have a details page where we can capture all the relevant information. We have an approval or process or approval workflow. We might even put business case narratives in here. We might put in financial elements. We might put in prioritization mechanisms, whether they be business drivers that how well they relate drive maybe a calculated score, or if an agile approach, maybe a weighted shortest job first methodology. And then even looking at the things that it may be may be related to. And here we're seeing that they're related to an actual key result in the strategic plan. So once again, that type of relation is key here, and be able to look at those associations as we go through the next phase on that, putting in ideas and requests that help align with our strategy. If I go into, say, a prioritization view in my ideas, and let's introduce Sophia into the mix here. If I go in and I want to ask Sophia a question, let me ask Sophia, what 3 projects, based on priority and ROI, what 3 projects should we approve first and why out of these ideas? And see what Sophia has. Now we've got all kinds of information, financial, business case information, business drivers, etc. And as it considers this, it's going to give us some semblance of an answer and some analysis as to what it is we should pick and why. So it tells me here the cybersecurity audit is number one and gives us the budget, the benefits, the prioritization score, the ROI, and it has the highest prioritization, making it essential to the company's data against potential threats. So it's not only the subject matter, but where it fits with the numerics, voice assistant integration, et cetera. It's crucial to enhancing the company's product offerings, et cetera. The idea is we're getting those types of suggestions to help us and guide us as we have a myriad of things to choose from. So once again, selection of ideas and requests. Now, ultimately, you can take these things and you can promote any of these into a portfolio item or a project at any given point in time. And by doing so, you would have an active portfolio, not just a funnel of ideas and requests that you can then work upon. Now in this portfolio could be designed for an ePMO or a departmental PMO. In this particular case, I've got multiple portfolios that are for different parts of the organization, for business transformation, operational excellence, the professional services part of the organization, the product innovation organization, the data analytics group. So for example, you could model this in an enterprise fashion or for a single entity within your organization. And if I look at this, for example, and I open up this, you'll notice that there's a hierarchy here in place. And you can develop your own, what we'd call primary plan type hierarchy. In this case, I've got a traditional portfolios with programs within the portfolios, and then I've got projects and epics that could be within the program, which could be, indicating more waterfallish types of projects versus maybe more agile type of efforts that we're working on. And in that regard, we can have all those in there and the details around that we're working on. Now we've got views in here that show KPIs and budget and benefits and costs, but the data and the fields you show, you could have different views with different columns of data appearing within that. Also, I'd like to call your attention to the icons on the left-hand side here. We talked about integration with other tools. Notice that here I've got Microsoft Planner, Azure DevOps, I've got Jira, I've got Project for the Web from Microsoft, I've got Project Professional from Microsoft. I even have some that only have a Teams icon, meaning it's connected to a Teams site for content and collaboration in Teams, but it doesn't have a scheduling tool associated with it, meaning that they're managing maybe the schedule and the work items directly here within OnePlan, meaning that everything comes together into one portfolio regardless of the source of the tool that's being worked with at the detailed level, right? Now, in this, yes, I've got a primary hierarchy, but you may want to look at it in different flavors. So for example, if I go in here and I go into a view that say is more of a flat view, let me strip out the hierarchy and just look at a list of projects and epics. I can take any of the data or metadata, and you can add as many custom fields as you want in here. There's a bunch of them in here that are provided by OnePlan, but I could look into this and I could say, all right, I don't want to look at this by portfolio and program. Let me look at this by business unit and summarize this and say, all right, how much of this is in our capital planning group, and be able to look at the projects that are within capital planning. And very quickly, I could just say, let me look at this portfolio, maybe by, I don't know, manager. And if I look at it by manager, I can come in here and I could say, God, Austin's got 6 projects going on all at once. What's going on with those? And be able to drill into those on an individual basis, right? I could do the same thing by the way, any other way I categorize projects. And here we got a field called category. In this case, I could say, hey, here's all the compliance projects that we're working on, et cetera. And you're basically only limited by your imagination on all that, right? Now, if I go into the board, allows us to use more agile types of approaches where I may be able to drag backlog items into different stages within here, right? I might be able to go in here and say in the proposed state, I've already got market research is already in the red, and I might want to say, why is that red? I can go in here and look at any given point in time, the details around that. Even though it's just a card with a few data elements on it, I can look at all the data and see what's going on with this particular element at any given point in time, or drill into it fully. I could also, like we talked about with the visualizer before, I could come into this and I could say, let me visualize the things that are in here so that I can come in here and look at how these things are related to one another as I go through that. So if I come through here and I go into the reporting and I say, let's visualize, I can see that market research has predecessors and successors, things that it's dependent upon and things that are depending on it. And that runway view that we talked about earlier on, we can see that market research is red, and it's putting at risk, because of its redness, the delivery of certain key results and hence certain objectives within that and other things that are related to it. We also have roadmap views in our portfolios. And as we go in here, we can look at these roadmaps, and you can fashion your own roadmap views in here, however you'd like to look at it. Like right here, I've got a roadmap by business unit, and it's got the swim lanes by business unit. It's got the key events that we're trying to work towards, but you can set your own, views in here as you see fit. I could come in here and just say, let me see it by goals, say, instead of by business unit. In this case, customer satisfaction, grow the business, etc. And at any given point in time, you could drill into that data regarding these things, just like we did in the other view. If I go to a portfolio summary view, say, in more of a list view that has a lot of data elements associated with it, and let's say I expand this out and look at all the details of all the projects and things that are in there, and I want to ask Sophia a question in the portfolio, and I could say, as we're executing on these, what I'd like to know is what 3 projects are at high risk of failure and why. And it's a fairly broad question, but perhaps we'd like to understand what that is. And maybe we want to be considering this because we've got some ideas coming in that we want to make room for. Maybe we want to reallocate resources and see maybe we should suspend operations on a certain project. It's telling us that market research is listed as off track, and that it's off track on multiple dimensions. Brand management is off track for both plan type, and it's actually has multiple things that'll put at risk by not succeeding. The idea there is you're going to get the information as to why you might potentially suspend or quit on certain projects in lieu of other ones based upon the answers you're getting from Sophia. Now, I would just say as you drill into specific projects in here, we've been looking at things all from a portfolio sense. As if I drill into one particular project or plan within here, you'll see that we have a bunch of data associated in what we call our details page. You can have your project life cycle or your phases in here, your gates, the data elements and the metadata that you would want to categorize and classify your projects by. Maybe bringing forth the business case data that came forward from the ideas area, your prioritization mechanism and prioritization score, your enterprise architecture on what elements. Here it's related to a bunch of key results. It's related to a bunch of applications. It's related to several products, and it's related to a value stream within our organization. But once again, these forms are configurable, so it would capture the data or display the data that you're interested in. But the key things here is you have work plans, and those work plans can either be, more waterfallish type of plans or backlogs here, like you see with sprint plans, or they could be waterfall schedules. You can track issues and risks and changes, document key decisions. And the key part here is that you can connect these to other tools. Like in this particular case, it's independent and being done right in OnePlan, but it could just as easily have been connected to Azure DevOps, Jira, or some other planning tool in the mix. Since it was a backlog item, it was connecting me to more agile tools. Our schedule work type is designed to connect you with maybe more waterfall type scheduling things like Smartsheet or Project, Planner, etc. The idea there is that you can connect to these other tools like we mentioned earlier on. And then any one of these projects has a resource plan available to it so that you can plan in terms of hours, FTEs, percentages, schedules, etc., and understand at any given point in time if the resources that you have are over or under allocated in relation to all the other things that they're working on within the organization. And the same thing holds true with your financial plan, where you can have detailed financial plans and tracking within this solution to help drive those financial considerations and constraints that you have to deal with. The resource plan, et cetera, that's going to get us to an overall resource capacity plan that we talked about. So for example, I just showed you a resource plan within an individual plan or individual project. Here I'm looking at a resource plan that's, for example, a roll-up of all the things that, for example, our developers are working on. And here I've got a developer here and I got Ehrlich Bachman, and I can see that he is over allocated. And if I want to look at this instead of hours, let me just look at it in terms of full-time equivalents, and I can see he is 2 times allocated within this period of time, and I have to offload things from him. So in this particular case, I need to be able to come in here and say, maybe I need to get him off something in here in this time frame. Maybe I need to get him off of, see if we can get him off of the market research project. And by doing that, we can maybe look at candidates and find matches for Ehrlich that might be helpful. And for example, in here, in this time frame, I see that potentially Toby Stevens has some bandwidth in the green here in these time frames where I'm going to need him for that project, and I could potentially select Toby and replace Ehrlich up above and do those resource trade-offs right in here as I go on through. So once again, we have a lot of information here that we can work with and help us reconcile and normalize our resource plans across all this. So let me just go into, say, some resource summary view that has all of our resources in there. Let's say I want to ask Sophia, what resources do I need to hire? It's telling me I first need to assess the current workload, etc. So it's giving me the things I need to consider. And it says based on the table data provided, it says that I'm short on the business analyst side of things and overage in certain months during the year. I need to hire additional business analysts to help, etc. Now, a follow-on question, what's nice about this is you can layer on these types of questions against all this, right? And after it gives me the types of information I'm looking at and who might be over allocated the things that we might need, I might ask another question at the end of that. And the other follow-on question might be, how many of each resource am I going to need, right? And maybe help me to quantify this as I go on through. So it's being pretty elaborate in what it's giving me as far as suggestions here, as far as the resource plan that I have in place, given the capacity that I have. Now, let me see if I say how many of each resource. And Sophia and AI capabilities are only going to get better as we go over time. I mean, it's amazing what kind of information we're getting. When we were in the work plan with the schedules, et cetera, you can actually give it a name of a project or a subject matter of a project and ask it to build a work breakdown structure for you, and it will actually build a suggested work breakdown structure for you, which you can then modify. Here is basically in the details. Basically, it's giving me the average hours that are needed in here, and considering that both existing analysts in here, I'm gonna need 1 to 2 additional. It's giving me pretty detailed analysis in here. So without elaborating that further, spending too much time on there, just want to let you know the resource management aspect can definitely be addressed with Sophia. Now, we do have a what-if modeler, as we talked about in the presentation earlier on. And in that what-if modeler, we can actually do scenarios, and you can actually build models where you have different categories or types of projects pulled into a model saying, these are the things we would like to potentially do. And there's 40 elements in here right now, right? And for example, if I wanted to do all of this, and I look at all the financial planning data, I could see in here that that financial plan, it would take me $20 million to do all of it. Right? If I look at it from a resource perspective, I can come in here and I can say what's going to take, and I can look and see, I've got a lot of red and over allocations in here. I do not have the resourcing to handle all of this, to do all of this as you see it right here. And this is where you'd come in this model, and you can actually create different scenarios off of this model. For example, I created a $10 million scenario saying if I needed to get down to $10 million, and I selected projects down to that $10 million level, these are the ones that are in, these are the ones that are out, right? And if I come down and I look at the financials around that, I can see that indeed it does get me under the $10 million threshold that I was looking at. If I look at it from a resource dimension, I can also see that almost all the red is gone, and even the ones that I have are not severely over allocated in any way, shape, or form across like it was prior. So the idea is, okay, not a bad looking alternative. And then I could do the same thing with a $15 million scenario and see how I can make with that. I could also interject, for example, instead of just selection or deselection, I can add a Gantt chart view of this at any given point in time. And for example, I could take a proposed project and say, well, what if I move it out to a time frame out in the future and allow it to do that and let it recalculate the financials around all that and basically look at what that would do to it. And as I look at something like this and I come down here, it actually would take not some out of the total value, but it takes out of what's in the current 12-month period, and it took it out and put it out into the next fiscal year. So once again, I can save these scenarios as I go through. I can compare them. So I can look at the $10 million and $15 million scenario, and I can see readily in here that if I get another $5 million of investment, I can target maybe another $20 million in benefit. It might be worth my while to go see if I can secure that $5 million in funding. And also look at the different things in here, like the details around each of these scenarios. I can look at, comparing the two and basically seeing what's in, what's out in each of the scenarios, what the priority is in each of those scenarios as they go relative to one another. I can also look at not only the financial impacts of that, but I can look at your traditional bubble charts, I should say. Let me look at the traditional bubble charts whereby I can pivot that data, and I can actually do a traditional bubble chart of seeing what's been selected. And in this case, I'm looking at priority versus benefits, and I can see I've got things that are higher priority, varying scale of benefits. And I can also see the things I didn't select, and maybe to do a double check to make sure that I didn't overlook something that I should have selected. And then once again, that visualizer capability is used in another context here. I can come in here and look at this and say, here are the things we did select, but here are unselected predecessors and successors. Are these things that are going to be critical for me to do? And should I reconsider whether or not I include them in lieu of something else? The runway and how these things are all interrelated, like we showed you before, once again, that's all here as the objectives and the key results and the plans and the products and applications, et cetera. And we can see how all these things are interrelated through our selection process. So once again, a holistic view of all those elements as we go on through. I would just say briefly, we talked about the enterprise architecture elements, and I know we're running short on time, is how we got to that, is you can create portfolios of different other enterprise or business architecture elements within the solution. Here in a comprehensive view, I've got a portfolio of products, I got a portfolio of business capabilities, I got a portfolio of applications, I got a portfolio of value streams and of organizational elements. And as I go through and look at any one of these, our plan types don't have to carry the same type of data. I went into a detail page on a project and it had a bunch of different details on it for projects or plans and epics. Well, here I've got the life cycle of a product, and I've got a product vision map. I've got Canvas. I've got prioritization. I've got timelines. I've got financials. I've got upgrades. I've got things related to this particular product. So the idea here is we can have the data we want for any one of these elements. And once again, these can all be related to a number of different things. So for example, I can look at the visualizer from this vantage point, meaning from a product-centric view. If I want to visualize how this is related to things, there are a couple products that are precedence related to Bachmanity. And I can also look at Bachmanity and see it is supporting 4 key results, hence 4 objectives, and it also has other projects and epics and business capabilities that it's related to as well. So I can see the totality of how this stuff is all interwoven.